such as video frames of them at airports, passports found at crash sites, and Mohammed Atta's luggage filled with incriminating evidence that they say is luggage that was supposed to get on Flight 11. The 9/11 Truth Movement, however, has pointed out that none of this evidence can withstand scrutiny. It contains absurdities, such as when the first plane to strike the World Trade Center is said to have resulted in a passport jumping out of the plane and falling to the ground unsinged by the fireball that was created. Another passport and a red bandana, some people said the hijackers were wearing red bandanas, were found at the crash site of United 93, although none of the plane is visible at the site. According to the official theory, the plane was coming down 580 miles an hour at a steep angle and went into the soft soil of Pennsylvania so hard and so fast it went completely underground, and yet somehow there must have been an open window, the bandana and the passport jumped out. Moreover, the incriminating evidence in Mohammed Atta's alleged luggage contained his will. Now, if you were going to fly a plane into the World Trade Center, would you take your will? I'm unfortunately not making this stuff up. Moreover, the 9/11 Commission, in defending the official conspiracy theory, portrayed Atta and the others as devout Muslims, ready to meet their Maker. But real truth seekers, getting empirical, have pointed out that Atta and several other of the alleged hijackers loved gambling, cocaine, alcohol, pork, and lap dances. These facts were even reported in the Wall Street Journal. And yet the 9/11 Commission, in spite of its professed love for facts, said it had no idea why these men often went to Las Vegas. Another stunning discovery occurred when one member of the 9/11 Truth Movement decided to get empirical about an especially puzzling matter. The fact that the FBI's website on Osama bin Laden as a most wanted terrorist said nothing about 9/11. It mentioned other terrorist acts for which he was wanted, but nothing about 9/11. So Ed Haas, who writes the Muckraker Report, which you can read on the internet, contacted Rex Toome, the chief of investigative publicity for the FBI, and asked why not. Toome replied, "The reason why 9/11 is not mentioned on Osama bin Laden's most wanted page is because the FBI has no hard evidence connecting bin Laden to 9/11. The 9/11 Commission could have made this discovery. Many months before the 9/11 Commission report appeared, the Family Steering Committee for the 9/11 Commission, comprised of relatives of the victims, asked the Commission to explain why bin Laden's profile on the FBI's Most Wanted Fugitives poster does not include the 9/11 attacks. However, the fact-loving 9/11 Commission, besides not answering this question, did not even reveal this fact to the American people. Another essential element in the official conspiracy theory is that several passengers on the airliners made phone calls to loved ones that morning, reporting that their plane had been hijacked by foreigners. Some of these calls were reportedly made on seatback phones, and such calls were clearly possible. But cell phones were reportedly used for many of the calls, especially from United Flight 93, from which about 10 cell phone calls were reportedly made. These calls have been publicized by movies about this flight. But there is extremely strong evidence that these calls would not have been possible in 2001. Given the technology at that time, a cell phone had to get a signal from a cell site, and these signals were sent out horizontally, not vertically. There was, to be sure, some leakage upwards, so a cell phone on a low-flying small plane could get a good signal. But as the plane got higher, success became increasingly unlikely. Most anecdotal evidence indicated that calls from small planes were impossible much above 8,000 feet, and that calls from airliners with their much greater mass were generally impossible above 2,000 feet. This anecdotal evidence was in strong tension with the official story, according to which calls were made from airliners flying from 25,000 to 40,000 feet. Seeing this tension, Canadian computer scientist and mathematician Key Dewdney, who had long written a column for Scientific American, decided to get empirical. Going up in a twin-engine airplane, he found that the success rate for attempted cell phone calls decayed to 0 by the time he reached 7,000 feet. Successful cell phone calls from airliners flying at 30,000 feet, he concluded, would have been flat out impossible. Dewdney's conclusion was reinforced by the fact that in 2004, Qualcomm Incorporated announced with great fanfare that it had developed a new kind of technology in which a cellular base station on the plane, called a picocell, uses a satellite to transmit its calls. Passengers on the test flight, Qualcomm announced, were able to place and receive calls as if they were on the ground. American Airlines, which conducted the test flight, said that this new technology would become operative in 2006. The truth of Dewdney's conclusion is also supported by a story in the Travel Technologist, published 1 week after 9/11, which said, "Wireless communication networks weren't designed for ground-to-air communication. Cellular experts privately admit that they're surprised that the calls were able to be placed from the hijacked airplanes. They speculate that the only reason the calls went through in the first place is that the aircraft were flying so close to the ground. But the aircraft were not flying close to the ground. According to the 9/11 Commission itself, United 93 was at 34,300 feet when the passengers began making calls, then climbed to 40,700 feet. How do defenders of the official story handle this problem? During an interview in 2006, a well-informed Canadian journalist, Evan Solomon, posed the following question to Lee Hamilton, the vice chair of the 9/11 Commission. If Flight 93 was flying well over 10,000 feet, 30,000, 40,000 feet, and yet cell phones don't work above 10,000 feet, how could people on their cell phone on a plane phone their relatives? Hamilton replied, "I'm no expert on that. I've been told cell phones work sometimes above 10,000 feet and as high as 30,000 feet. So it may have been that some of the calls went through and some didn't. I just don't know." One problem with Hamilton's answer is that he'd been asked about 40,000 feet, not merely 30,000. But the more serious problem is that although Hamilton was one of the leaders of the 9/11 Commission, which defended the official story, said there was no doubt about the fact that it was carried out by hijackers, when challenged about one of the foundational pillars of that story, said, "I just don't know." Moreover, his statement that he had been told that cell phones sometimes worked as high as 30,000 feet suggests that his 9/11 Commission had performed no tests and had not even discussed this issue, although it had long been raised by critics of the official story. Most unempirical. The same lack of empirical curiosity permeates Popular Mechanics' treatment of the issue. Although its authors mention Dewdney's experiments, they try to debunk his conclusions by simply quoting recent interviews with two industry spokesmen who reportedly said that it was possible to make a call